here with Bruce Firestone. And as we know, you're well known in Ottawa as the founder of the Ottawa Senators.
Yeah.
But you also wear many hats. You have a lot of experience in urban and regional planning, land development, and real estate. So we'd like to talk to you today about rural development in Ottawa.
If you go back, a generation or more, you'll find that many people in Ottawa chose Ottawa because it had 11 different municipalities and townships. So not everybody wanted to live above a pub on Elgin Street. And some people wanted to live in West Carleton, or they wanted to live in Goulburn, or they wanted to live in Orleans, or what have you, Cumberland, and Greeley. And so that was the great thing about this community. It's one of the things that attracted me to this community, come back here after living overseas for many years. I lived in Australia for 7 years. And I came back here and I thought, wow, what a great place. You can live in Dunrobin, you can live in Sunset Lakes and commute to, in a GA capital, you can be downtown in 25 minutes, or you can be out of the capital in 25 minutes. And I think when we amalgamated 11 governments and the regional governments, so 12 governments into one, we kind of forgot that, and we got away from that. And the planners and of course many of our politicians, they sit on Elgin Street, they sit in our city hall, and they have kind of forgotten, I think, to some extent, that the differences of lifestyles that are available to people is something that is a positive, net positive for Ottawa. Well, I've had numerous debates over this with city planners and, of course, with city politicians, and I think that it's kind of a mistake to think it's one or the other. Right now in Ottawa, we think that everybody wants to live in a condo on the 10th floor. Now, my wife and I, we have 5 kids, and, frankly, for us, we didn't want to live in a condo on the 10th floor or the 12th floor with 5 children, 2 cats, a budgie, a gerbil. And so we lived in Canada and for 20 years and loved every minute of it. So I think we think today that it's got to be more height and less spreading out of the city. But in fact, if that were true, then Ottawa's rent gradient would look exactly like Manhattan, if you see what I'm getting at, Stephanie. Instead, what you do is you move out and you move up. And so the people who live in the outskirts of the city, who don't want to live in a high-rise condo, they purchase services from people who do. And so it's a mix, and you have those options that I talked about earlier in this interview. Now, I think we've forgotten that. Well, in the United States, certainly in the New England states, there's a strong movement called conservation subdivision design. And what that does is it allows you to bring communal services to small villages in the rural parts of New England. And we should be doing that in Ottawa, in my opinion. It's called small bore sewer systems and communal wells. It allows you to save tremendous amounts of land in its natural state and for wildlife, and it produces better villages. But we are very hesitant about doing that in Ontario because the Ministry of Environment and Energy and our cities and towns are afraid that if they fail, they'll end up footing the bill. It took 60 months to plan it and 28 months or 27 months to build. So planning was harder than building. I think Dan Anderson and his partner and his team there at Sunset Lakes have had from the very first moment that they thought about Sunset Lakes of having a mixed-use village. And if you look at successful suburbs like Canada, there's almost as many jobs in Canada as there are people. And we have to do a better job in Orleans, and we have to do a better job in Barrhaven of making sure that happens. And that would be just as true of Greeley and Sunset Lakes as it is of the other communities. Well, I lived in Australia, as I mentioned earlier, and there in Australia, you are not allowed as a developer to go ahead and build a community without having a pub, without having a dry cleaner, without having a little corner store, so you and your children can walk to a store and get a liter of milk or whatever you need. If you go through Barrhaven, I did that. I have a client who's looking for a location for a pub chain to go to Barrhaven, and we took a drive. He's from Toronto, and we took a drive through Barrhaven, and I was frankly amazed that we had 3,000 or 3,500 new homes built, one after the other, and there wasn't one location reserved for a pub or a restaurant or a convenience store, and I think that's a mistake. So I think Dan Anderson and your team there have had in your minds from day one to combine that, and I think you're on the right track. I really like them, and having said that, I like mix community. So you can have buildings that, you know, are for 55 and up, and you can have other buildings that are obviously for families. And because I think as, you know, as I get older, you know, I'm 61 now, I don't want to be isolated. I like young people, I teach a lot, I teach young people, and I enjoy their company. So I think if you talk to elders, you know, my age and older, you'll find that many of them do like to have young people around and see them. So I think it's important to have a mixing of classes, elder classes and others. And I also think that amenities are really important. It gives the community a certain cohesiveness. One of the developers I'm close to in Toronto, they won't build a condo without having what are called organisateurs in it. So they're like, it's like Club Med. They run around the building and they say bridge night or volleyball, you know, or whatever. So you bring the community closer together as a community when you just don't go to your house, close the door, and that's it. I think it ranks right up there with the best. And as you said earlier, Stephanie, you're going to bring some more commercial development, which I think is really important. So I think that's coming. I was just talking to Dan Anderson and his group there a few minutes ago about that. I think that might be the missing link, and I think it's going to be a great development. You know, homeowners associations should work better than they do, and I think there might be some politics involved in that. You know, you get 30 homeowners together, or 100, sometimes politics takes over. The business improvement associations, the BIAs, have been extremely effective, many of them, and I really like what they're doing. Well, thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you so much.
All the best.